Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. This is episode 31, and today is May 13th, 2019. Easy to remember because my birthday is in 2 days. In this episode, we are closing out our discussion of Book 2 of the Stormlight Archive, Words of Radiance. This time, we are going to be talking about all the extra juicy bits that fill in the cracks. The epigrams and the interludes and all the just little side stories that make Roshar such a lively place. I am Bill, and I am joined, as always, by my comprehensive co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome, guys.
Hello. Hello.
Dillo.
Dillo?
I'm just sorry. I'm just trying to think what a comprehensive person is.
It's better than an incomprehensive one, trust me.
That's true.
That gets messy. Now, as a reminder, for those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we want to remind you, you can actually interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. We record episodes of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So join us, have fun, take part in chat, and just, be with us. Interact. Have fun.
Socialize.
Under penalty of death.
No. Jordan, what is it with you and death threats? We're like not even 10 minutes into the episode, and you're...
What? I just want people to interact.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway.
Well, now, for those of you, if you haven't been following along and you are interested in our other discussions of the rest of the novel, our previous 3 episodes covered each of the 3 main plot threads. In week 1, we talked about Shallan and her story. In week 2, we talked about Kaladin and Syl and Bridge 4 and all them. And week 3, we talked about the Kholins and the war on the Shattered Plains. And this week, we are talking about all the fun little juicy bits. Mm-hmm. So, do we want to start with the interludes or the epigrams? Because I like both.
Maybe we should do the interludes since that's the order it's in the document. So we may as well.
Yeah, but that's too simple. All right, well, the main interlude for this book, in the first book, we sort of had one overarching interlude that kind of kept showing up, and that was Szeth's story. Mm-hmm. And in this one, we're following one of the listeners known as Eshonai.
Mm-hmm. Their shard bearer.
She is the shard bearer who fought with Dalinar in book 1. And I believe she's the only shard bearer that the listeners have, correct?
Yep, she's their only shard bearer.
They used to have more, but...
Yeah.
You know.
Attrition's a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what one of the things that Brandon does, he's done it in a lot of his books. He likes to have sort of an other character who gives us perspective on a completely different society. Mm-hmm. And that's what Eshonai does. She gives us an inside look into what life is like for the Parshendi, their everyday life. Mm-hmm. She goes around interacting with people. So it, for lack of a better word, it kind of humanizes them.
Yeah, you get some insights into them because before you had no real grasp on what they were like at all. Like, I remember there were comments from some of the humans about, well, how do they even have kids? Because, I mean, you don't ever see children.
Right.
But then you find out that there's different forms they take, and that's how they have kids.
Yeah, so I think that's a fascinating thing that Brandon looked at, and also sort of the mechanism with it, of how it works.
Yeah.
Because there's a similarity to it, to the Radiance, but because what they do is they go out and they bond with a Spren. But they actually bond with different Spren, and they can't bond with the this is according to a word of Brandon, I believe. They can't normally, at least, can't bond with one of the high spren.
Yeah.
Just with the lower ones.
More like emotions. It almost feels like.
Yeah.
The natural ones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Basically, yeah. Like I said, the non-radiant spren, the sort of sub ones, I guess.
No, but it's interesting. I love how they view the humans, where they're just like they're all forms at once, and just how to them that seems like chaos.
It's horribly distracting.
Well, it's like because they're always in mate form, they're always in war form at the same time. How do they deal with that? And on top of it, they can't hear the rhythms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it to the point where it actually rattles them when they speak to humans for the first time, and they realize their language is dead. You know, there is no life. There's no rhythm to their speech. Mm-hmm. And it's it's a different kind of language barrier.
Yeah, because you've had some human viewpoints where they'd always comment and like they said there's like a weird cadence to whenever they would talk, you know.
Well, and you can kind of compare it, for example, to and of course, spoiler warning, and this one is probably going to include spoilers for anything goes, because this is kind of the anything goes look at everything. Yeah. But it kind of reminds me of when you talk about the what were they? The Southern Scadrians, and the way they talked, and they would signal emotions and stuff like that.
Because they're always wearing a mask.
Because you can't read their facial expressions, and so they signal sort of what they mean and stuff like that. In this, they speak to a different rhythm to indicate meaning. Although it's interesting because they can actually speak against what they're actually feeling to emphasize what they're instead trying to convey.
Yeah. So there's layers to it.
Yeah. Well, and it's also useful for lying, where you speak to a different rhythm than the one you
actually
mean.
Right.
And so it takes more skill to read for them to read each other than others.
Right.
And the other thing, it's just because of how dead the humans' language is, they're more, at least this is the impression I got, they're more visually expressive, whereas the listeners can trust the rhythms. And
they feel the rhythm, they feel the rhyme.
Everybody get ready. It's Everstorm time.
Cool run-ins. But yeah.
I feel like that the listeners also have like plate that sticks out of their skin sometimes, and that would probably make facial expressions harder too.
Yeah.
Right. But again, only sometimes.
Yeah.
Just the fact
not all the time.
And the fact that they take these different forms to the point where they're taller, they're like it's literal forms. It's not just this is kind of the mode I'm in. It's not like an ermine and a stoat, basically
two different color coats,
of the same animal. This is like completely different subspecies almost.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, it's interesting how, like, when Eshonai takes storm form, and she's like, "Whoa, I have hair strands. Haven't had those in years." And
well, she's been in war form.
Yeah, she's been in war form for a very, very long time.
Yeah, nimble form has hair too.
Yeah,
and
so
mate
she
form.
and mate form. That's right.
But it was interesting where she could feel the difference like immediately, because you get used to a body, they completely change their body. It's the only thing I can compare it to, I think, is what happens to the Elantrians when they're taken by the Sheod.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to the point when they change their body, it's almost like they have a completely different physiology.
Yeah. Well, and they definitely have a different mental state.
Right.
Yeah.
And
their
that's
moods
what I was
are
thinking,
different,
is like,
and their temperament.
For example, I mean, anybody who's been hangry, you know that your biological state can affect your mood. And that's sort of what's going on, is their body processes foods and responds to stimuli differently, and it affects their mental state.
Yeah, well, and it's probably also, I mean, assuming if it's changing their entire physiology, it's probably changing their brain chemistry as well.
Exactly.
To bias
and
them
their
towards certain
hormones and
actions.
whatever else. Yeah.
Because, I mean, you can see where the mate form is definitely focused in one biological direction, but
Right.
I mean, you see Eshonai, who's, you know, she's known as this, she has this severe wanderlust about her. She takes
Right.
storm form, that's gone. She doesn't care about that at all. And it's all about
that form seems to be more
That's a little bit
all-encompassing
different
than other
though,
ones, though.
because
Yeah.
that's one of the forms of power. That's one using the void sprint.
Yeah.
But let's take a step back, though. One of the things, because we talked about how Eshonai has been in war form for a long time, and one of the reasons is because she's part of the Council of Five. Mm-hmm. And the Council of Five is just an interesting idea to me, because you have these multiple forms, and they've basically set it so that there's somebody to literally represent each of the demographics of the listeners.
Yeah.
You know, it's a representative government essentially.
but instead of geographic location, it's
actual
physiological.
physical state.
Yeah.
And so you represent each of the different thought processes.
Yeah. And it seems like each form has a strength and a weakness to it. Or some of them, it's really hard to find the strength, especially dull form.
Exactly.
or as they call
But-
it, slave form.
Yeah.
But you know, and so she is, yeah, and I can never remember any of their names, but the one who's in dull form, she's very she's
think.
very slow and methodical, but there's a wisdom to her.
Yeah,
because
when
of
she
that
descends,
slow,
everybody notices.
methodical nature.
I just remember when she's fully taken by the storm form, and she's, you know, plots to basically kill the five eventually.
Yeah.
Where she's like the first one that has to go is the mate form guy, because he has way too much control over that, and that's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
He's not supposed to be as useful as he is.
Well, and so if he takes storm form, he could resist,
Yep.
Yeah.
or he has the possibility of resisting, and she's just like,
Or even usurping her or something, you know, just he's got too much control.
Yeah,
And-
it's incredible what they do
And there
with
was
this.
and with Zoln, she the dull form, she also was like, even though she agreed to get changed, she needs to be in the group that's going to be killed because they didn't agree
right.
to be changed.
And the only thing
yeah.
that gives her pause is when it's like, do you know your mother's in that
Your
group?
mom's in that group.
And she's like, whoa, wait.
Crap.
And then they go.
They get away.
Because I had forgotten a lot about this subplot since, and the fact that that group didn't show up again in Oathbringer.
Right.
Something
Wait.
tells me book 4 is going to have a lot of the listeners that survived.
Right.
I could have sworn they came up in Oathbringer, but I might be thinking of a different.
There were others
Group.
who did, but I don't think those specific ones did. I think
Okay.
they were mentioned in passing.
They were
Okay.
mentioned because in Oathbringer, because Venli, when she's in envoy form, has to go around telling everyone,
Oh.
you know, my people are gone, and she keeps thinking back. It's like, but I know some of them escaped. But you keep
Yeah.
telling. So did you kill them off, or are you just
Right.
having me spill a
Yeah.
lie?
Right.
As Venli starts to realize, man, this job, they did not put any of these details in. Like, the dental's good. The dental's great. But, man, there are
There's some.
downsides to this job that I did not realize. If only I hadn't gotten my sister murdered.
Well, okay, now let's talk about Vinley and Eshonai. I do find it interesting the way their roles have kind of reversed, because Eshonai was the one with the wanderlust. She was the explorer. She was the one who would always stretch boundaries and go out where she could. And her mother, you know, when she's speaking to her mother, who's essentially got a form of Alzheimer's, you know, she talks to her and talks about how her sister is so, you know, steady and hardworking. And then when you get to the later stages, Eshonai is the one who's become steady to the point where she's one of the five. She takes war form and she leads and she stays close to home, and And Vinley's the one who's kind of starting to push the boundaries to the point where she's looking for new forms, and she actually is hoping to find these forms of power because she wants to push the boundaries. And it's just really interesting to see how that dynamic shifted over time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong. We know through Oathbringer she was guided to these forms by Voidspren.
Yes,
Yeah,
but she was also looking for them.
Yeah, because her and her scholars, they found Nimble form.
Right.
Yeah, and they were looking for more forms to try and find how to get forms that would be more helpful to them.
Right.
There's a part that has me wondering something where Eshonai, they're both in storm form at this point. Mm-hmm. Eshonai talks about how how Venli hasn't seemed to change at all from going to storm form, whereas she did. And
right.
Eshonai seems to feel like there's something wrong with that. Mm-hmm. And it makes me wonder if Venli had done something where she might have been inoculated or biased towards this somehow already.
Well, Vinley actually says that she was looking for it even from before the time of it. So I actually think that Vinley kind of, you know how they have there's the whole saying you got to worry about the quiet ones because they're kind of the ones who are going to explode, and she's been the stay at home, just be steady, and after a while she's just like, I'm done. All right. Mm-hmm. Because she's watching.
She's been bottled up for so long.
Well, because she's seeing that in spite of being peaceful and steady, her people are being murdered.
Yeah.
And so eventually she's just like, okay, you know what? Being peaceful hasn't worked. Now we got to find a new plan.
Mm-hmm.
One was a lot more murder.
And red eyes and scary.
And so they start going crazy.
Yay.
Any other thoughts on Eshonai before we move on? Eshonai and the listeners, and
it was just interesting to see the different society and kind of how they were, and that they'd and looking back on when they'd agreed to kill Gavilar.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know why when Eshonai in Stormform attunes peace, she hears her own voice screaming.
I think it's because she has a Voidspren in her, and they're not about peace.
Yeah, well, that and attuning peace, I think, kind of helps to drown out the Voidspren, and because remember, peace is one of the non-new rhythms.
Yeah.
And so she's listening to a more natural, and suddenly she actually hears herself.
But she feels other rhythms, and she doesn't hear screaming. Like she goes through them and attunes them.
But I think it's the fact that peace is so divergent from Voidspren and it's not Warform, it's Stormform and all of that. So
I don't. There's just
anti-odium.
There's something. The description of it is remarkably similar to the screaming that Kaladin feels when he touches
the Shardblade.
A Shardblade. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there might be something. I don't know what. It feels peculiar to me, and I don't know what I'm thinking, but I just feel like there's something there.
I can't specifically say that you're wrong, and so, but
a Raffo, I guess.
Yeah. I feel a lot of it is just the fact that you attune to peace. One thing about peace is you sort of feel your true self a bit more. And it allows her kind of to break through, like her inner self to kind of to break through. And just be like, no, this is not right.
This is wrong. Very wrong.
It's just weird to me she hears a completely different voice at that point. Like I said, I don't know, but I feel like there's something there. It's just beyond the surface. I can't scratch that itch.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to Risen, our Thalen apprentice. So she basically goes to the Wandering Isle from World of Warcraft, and I mean, no, so they go to trade with the Reshi, which is one thing we haven't at this point. We actually haven't met another Reshi, but we do meet one later because Lift is the Reshi girl.
I'd forgotten that we met her for the first time in this book, and I was like, oh yeah, we didn't see her until
And
now.
we'll talk about Lift in a little bit, but we do meet, apparently, some of her people.
Yep.
And
And
really-
lots of other people, too, because it's not just genetically Reshi people. The other people have defected to the islands.
And there's an Amian that she comes across.
Yes, he's hanging upside down. That's right. And he's like, it's not so bad except for when I black out, you know?
So is he, I forget, is he bound?
Yeah, his feet are bound. He's hanging upside down.
And he's hanging upside down from the tree. And but he's still very, very just friendly.
He's very nice and talkative, but they're like, don't go near him. He's, he's an Amian. So isn't there didn't we suspect, I thought there was a suspicion that he was from the same, he was seen before. Like we got a viewpoint from him. In
that's
the previous
Axes.
book.
I believe
Axes
that's
the
okay, it's
Collector.
Axes. Okay.
The Collector. I believe you're right.
Well, they talk about his shadow going the same. His skin was the same way, and he has that same sort of amiable.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I
Right.
thought it was all Amians.
I think
had
it was
the
a
shadow
different one
go
actually.
weird.
Now that I think about it, I'll have to.
No, but all Amians can't be amiable, can they?
Oh boy,
The amiable
boy.
Amians.
Clearly, they're amiable. They're all amiable.
All of them.
But no, the thing that it's a wandering island. B, it's clearly Pleasure Island, and
I love how they have war. They yell at each other first, and they hardly ever actually take blows.
well, it's such a hassle when your battlefields are constantly moving, and
Yeah,
but
and I did love the moment when nobody would tell her what the islands looked like, and then she realizes it's a enormous great shell.
yeah.
Yeah,
And they're like, no, the first time is great. We can't spoil it for you. You just have to see it.
But it's weird. It's a weird concept, and then on top of it, then there's the haggling that goes on, and I just wouldn't ever deal with these people. Like, I got annoyed and pissed off reading it. I'm just like, why bother? What are they actually giving you? How is this financially worth it? There's no amount of money worth dealing with these people.
Okay, the only Saya Amian who shows up in the Coppermine is Axes.
So this one doesn't get a name. I just looked at it again. He doesn't.
Okay.
He doesn't get a name.
I'm just
Okay.
assuming it's Axes.
just because he's cheerful and friendly.
Head
Well,
canon.
it's also because he was getting
mentions-
taken by the town guards at the end of his interlude in Way of Kings, and he was all like, "Oh, bother," just all devil
Maybe I'll
may
see.
care about it. And
Imprisonment
this-
spren. This
yeah.
one, he mentions don't ask the king about their soul or something.
I don't remember. For some,
I don't have it in front of
but
me.
anyway, so enough about the Amians. First off, the reason that Risen is here is she's supposed to trade with the Reshi king. And her Babsk is getting sick and can't go with her, supposedly.
She's worried he's gonna die. Like
Yeah.
he looks really terrible.
Yep. And so she goes up and she's told to be bold.
But not told what she's trading for, just that it's already been arranged, but she needs to be bold and cement the thing.
Which, that concept, the fact that the whole trade has already been done, but she needs to convince them that she's worthy of it.
This is why I wouldn't want to deal with these people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, we've got a contract. He's like, yes, but you still have to haggle again.
Yeah.
It just, this entire island sounds like I am trying to argue with a toddler, because the I don't know the rules, and
Right.
the rules keep changing. And it's just like,
Welcome to my life.
I know, I don't want it.
She's supposedly talking to a translator, and then she realizes, wait a minute.
He didn't translate every time.
It was like, you know what I'm saying. You speak my language. And
Let
so
alone the
she's,
king is a woman, and
Right.
that throws her too. She's like, well, why don't you just call her the queen? And it's like, no, but it's the king and the king's consort, not the queen. It's the king.
right.
So
which actually kind of reminds me of, I believe it was, I can't remember if it was Victoria or Elizabeth, who referred to herself as the king. Like I am a woman king.
I think it might have been Elizabeth, because she was the first one, but
I think that's
not
right.
sure.
But anyway.
All I know is she comes up with a poor plan to sway her.
Well, all she's got to go on is bold.
Right, and she's like, I'm going to take this to a higher authority. Like,
because you won't deal with me, and you revere this great shell. I guess I'll go talk to the great shell.
Essentially, she has to speak to a manager.
Yep.
And
the manager tries to eat the rope.
And it's turtles all the way down when it comes to managers.
Yeah. And it just... Oh, you feel bad for poor Risen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
she did fill the script of be bold, because she did that.
To the point where she impressed them enough that they gave her a Larkin.
No, I think the Larkin picked her. They give the Larkin corpse to...
That's right. They traded for the Larkin corpse.
But the Larkin picks her. The live Larkin picks her.
That's right.
Because I think she has a moment of like eye contact with the Great Shell, and my feeling is that there's something there. That the Great Shell's like, you can get a Larkin.
Now, that's one thing, though. Anytime people ask Brandon about the Larkins, it's almost an automatic raffo. So it's just like, okay, this is going to be important at some point.
Oh, and you do see some importance in Oathbringer. And I feel like is there one in the scene with Lift? Is that what that is?
Yes. I feel like at one point she does interact with one.
Because there's a little critter that like sucks away her Stormlight. And I remember it has wings, and I wasn't sure if that was a...
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, I feel better. I caught it this time. So.
Yeah, they feed on Stormlight. So
speaking
those things
of
are going to be important at some point. Now we'll talk about him in.
Well, but there's Yim as well.
Yim?
YM, right. the cobbler.
Oh, did he not get it in the notes?
Is he in this one?
Yeah.
Yes. Poor Yim. I loved Yim. Yeah, he's Yim. He was in the first or the second set.
Yeah, he was the second one, I believe.
Okay, then I must have missed him when I was...
Yeah, and so unless Brandon creates a single letter named character, this will definitely be the shortest name he does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's how appropriate, because he lasts in the book about as long as his name.
Poor guy. He's only on screen for that long. He's an older guy at least, so he did live a long time.
And he's I think he's a truth watcher.
I don't
know. He heals. He's a edge dancer.
Is he? I don't think he's an edge dancer.
He's definitely an edge dancer.
He heals. He has.
Is his sprint a creation sprint?
I think so.
Creation a cultivation sprint?
Yeah, I think so. Because he talks about how it moves.
Well,
like
the reason we know it is because
like light.
The reason it's pretty sure it's a edge dancer because Wendell talks about how he could have. He's like, I was going to bond a cobbler. I could have gone to him, but no, I came to you.
I just remember he talked about gardeners. Like he was, I was a gardener, but I don't remember him saying cobbler, but he could have.
No, he was saying he was going to like bond himself to a nice cobbler who was making shoes for poor children. He's like, it would have ended so well with us, and it's just like, oh, Wendell, it would have been.
He chose the better one.
It would have been so bad.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm remembering this one so poorly.
I read it fairly recently. You want me to talk about it?
Yes.
Do you remember it, Jordan, or no?
You go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay.
I don't have the book in front of me.
I read it. I'm not looking at the book right now, but I read it like yesterday. So it starts out, and part of me feels grossed out because he talks about like cleaning out kids' toenails and trimming toenails and stuff like that for part of it, because he's making shoes for orphans. And he ascribes to a religion that's like dying out or not as common, where everybody is part of the same organism, and it knew things, but it didn't have experience.
It's the same one as Evie.
Right, which again, we're focusing on Words of Radiance. We're not going into Oathbringer.
Yeah, but no, it's the same one.
Anyway, so I haven't reread Oathbringer yet, so that's soon. But he he's like, if I don't help you out, then I'm only hurting myself. So that's why he's giving away the shoes. Plus, he has a terrible secret in his past, which doesn't help either. But he only charges the kids. They have to tell him their story. And he's used to, like, he has to, like, make things just kind of work because the kids won't come back for the shoes if he makes them, and then, you know, they have to pick them up. So he just makes whatever he has work. And so he talks to the kid gets the shoes and leaves, and he's like, you're weird, but okay, you know, just, and he's still kind of, and he heals the kid's foot too, because the kid has an infected cut, and that's part of what makes me sit there and go, he's got to be an edge dancer, because he healed.
He's a truth watcher. I'm looking at it right now.
Is he a truth watcher? Well, then,
because remember, Renarin as well, he can heal as well.
Oh, but can he heal other people?
Yes. He healed Adolin.
Because everyone can, all the Knights Radiant can heal themselves.
Right. But Renarin healed Adolin. Yeah, right here it says, In was a Surge Binder. He had access to the Surge of Progression and to the Surge of Illumination. As such, he had the abilities of the Order of Knights Radiant associated with Pylia, i.e. Truth Watchers.
I didn't
see
him do anything
Boom!
with Illumination.
For whatever reason, I was so sure he was an edge dancer.
Well, I was only doing it because Wendell talked so much about him that I just assumed.
The cobbler. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, so I thought he was an edge dancer. Apparently not. But yeah, so he gets the kid. He gets him some shoes. The kid leaves. And his friend keeps saying, he's still here. He's here. He's still here. And then he realizes that his back door is open, and it's this guy with a shard blade, and he's got a white mark, and I think he has darker skin.
Yep.
And he's hunting him down, and he's like, no, justice needs to be served, and so he chases him down and kills him.
The side order of spaghetti.
Wow. Pulling out the very obscure old time internet references. Jordan, you're on those tonight. Anyway,
I'm proud of that.
Anyway, so
if
that's
you don't get what that is,
guy.
Sorry, but it's hilarious to all 7 people who got it.
Wow.
I am not one of the 7.
I think 7 is generous. I loved him though. He was just this very kind, warm person who had a
very
rough
thoughtful too. Yeah, because what was it? He was like drunk and he killed somebody or something to that effect, like 30 years before.
It was something where it's like,
he delivered poison in a drink and he didn't realize it was poisoned.
Yep.
But he was delivering. He's like, the vintage was supposed to be the message.
Yes, he gave
or
a bottle of
and
wine to a woman,
and
she
the
drank
vintage
it was
and
a
died.
message she would recognize. Yeah.
And she drank the poison.
And then he went on to live a life peacefully and all sorts of good stuff. And it does a lot to extend Nail's character more than... Like, that's almost why Im exists.
Yep.
Is to explain who Nail is.
Well, if you don't know that Nail is not just a stickler, but he's looking for petty reasons to kill, he's not as threatening when you meet Lift. Because you realize, oh no, he'll kill you for basically any infraction whatsoever. You don't know why, but at this point, but you know he'll do it.
He does. He does explain himself a little bit with Lift.
Yeah.
But it's still not very clear until you've read other stuff and you're like, oh, that's part of tying it in.
And so, which kind of expands our view of who the Skybreakers are as well. Because they're just this absolute, true lawful group.
Yeah.
And we get even more of that in the next book, but we'll talk about that in a few weeks. Okay, so then we get a brief look at Zale, who we've already talked about from Adolin's perspective and Kaladin's perspective, but this is where we get a few clues that to who he is. Because, Jordan, you mentioned this to me. Doesn't he use the term investiture?
Yeah, well, because the first thing is he wakes up and he's like, he expected to hear a voice, but there hadn't been a voice for years.
That's how that was the end of it, actually.
Oh, that was the end of it?
Yeah.
Okay, but he wakes up and he can... Because the reason he wakes up is he can feel someone coming. Which, it's like, okay, that's life sense. That's, that's what? First, second heightening? I can't remember.
Second, I
I don't know. Lots of breaths. And then, on top of that, that's right, it's those darn storms that come here that are like chock full of investiture. And it's like, well, that's oddly specific.
That is a Cosmere aware term.
Yes.
And then he ends it with, he went to bed almost expecting to hear a voice in his head. But of course, there hadn't been one of those for years.
I know.
And it's just
so
like,
sad.
oh, and of course, at the time, you have no idea that there's a crossover with Warbreaker.
Yeah.
I didn't catch it when I was
Not at all.
I was like, this guy's weird. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I thought it was talking about like maybe he had almost bonded some Spren or something. And...
Right. And that's sort of what I was thinking. And I think that was very intentional.
Just keep it vague so they have to guess.
But yeah, and of course he uses his color metaphors
To poor Kaladin, who's like, what? What are you talking about?
And then we get a look inside of Talon's head.
Poor Talon.
That's not a place that I want to be.
No.
It's very interesting rereading this section after Oathbringer, where we've gotten to meet Odium, and we've gotten viewpoints from both Venli and Dalinar meeting Odium. It actually reminded me a lot of Venli dealing with Odium, because she talks about this horrible searing pain, and how it's just oppressive and it's burning anything. It's like she's being unmade in its presence, and the entire time he's just talking about it's burning, at fire everywhere, and then you realize he lasted.
Flames
to the side of my head.
From the side of my face.
I got that one. I know that's one.
I got that reference.
I did.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, he keeps talking about burning and all this stuff, and then you realize, oh yeah, he felt the entire weight of the Oath Pact by himself for what?
3,000 years.
3,000 years? Oh.
Yeah.
In regards to 3,000 years, he's actually doing remarkably well.
He's doing great, yeah.
3,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck. But
Coming
yeah,
with all the random quotes today.
Sorry,
no, it's all good. We're all doing it.
I blame Jordan.
I don't need to stand for this.
But yeah, it's a very, very quick interlude, but it's just sort of a look into the head of somebody who was introduced in the previous book. Now, one thing I found interesting is when book 1 came out, and even during book 2, Brandon was always cagey when people were asking about Talon. They'd say, oh yeah, so he's a herald. And he'd say, he's someone who at least thinks he's a herald. And I always found that strange, especially because now with Oathbringer, it's pretty clear that it's actually him. And so I wonder why he was being cagey.
He may have changed his plan slightly.
Or maybe he thought it wasn't as clear as everyone else thought it was.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But I did find that interesting. Okay. Next. Lift. One of the characters I absolutely love, except for one stinking thing.
Awesomeness!
I love Lift.
Are you practicing your evil laugh? Because that was the most evil I've heard your laugh.
I don't know. It happens sometimes. It's great.
But every time she says the word awesomeness, it takes me out of the book. Because it just doesn't feel quite right. I understand the word awesome originated before the 80s. Long before the 80s, when it actually referred to something that fills you with awe. That said, it is taken on such a form in our modern vernacular that it takes me out of the story.
Well, and you know what? That's how she uses it. She uses it in the 80s version of
exactly.
It bugs me. It bugs me every time she says it. And I like her a lot, with the exception of every time she says awesomeness. Had he used any other word, I probably would have rolled with it.
Now, it
just doesn't bug me as much for whatever reason. Like, I can acknowledge that, yes, from that viewpoint, yeah, I could see it bugging me, but it doesn't pull me out for whatever reason, because I like her too much for it to affect me that way.
Now, a quick look into Oathbringer. There is a scene that I actually do appreciate where I believe Wendell essentially says to her, "You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means."
I wonder if that was a response from
and
Brandon.
I think it kind of was. And she sort of acknowledges it. And I'm like, I wonder if this is sort of him laying an escape plan. But, because I feel like it did sort of foreshadow that she's going to stop using this word as she
matures.
Whatever happens to her. Because there's something up with her. Now...
Well, we don't know, because we know she saw the oh goodness, the night
Night
what
Watcher.
is it called? Night Watcher.
Night Watcher.
Yes, so we don't know what her request was. Still, do we?
We kind of do, but I don't think we know in this book. I think she talks about that in Oathbringer.
Yeah, so it's referenced that she did talk to the Night Watcher, but we don't know what it is yet.
But as part of her visit, she now is able to metabolize food directly into investiture.
Mm-hmm.
Making her simultaneously way more and way less versatile than everyone else.
Have we seen her just do straight Stormlight, though, too?
I don't think she can.
No, because she specifically asks in Oathbringer, when she gets summoned, she asks where food is, even though Dalinar has infused all the stones everywhere with Stormlight. He's like, any questions? She's like, yeah, where can I get something to eat? And Dalinar just sort of...
I think there's a kitchen.
She tends to not give important details as to why she's asking things, but that's part of her charm.
Well, and at some point, this is probably in Oathbringer, but they actually refer to her as almost dwelling partially in the cognitive realm.
Yeah,
because she can touch
Wendell. Yeah.
And threatens to eat him.
Oh, and prune him. That's the other thing, too.
And she constantly refers to him as a Voidbringer.
And he's always getting upset about that. He's like, stop it. It's not what I am.
I love Wendell. For some reason, in my head, he reminds me of... what's his name? I can't think of...
You got to give me something to go off.
No. Oh, Wesley from Buffy. So Alexis Denisov's character.
Yes, because I'm going to know that name.
The Watcher who's not Giles.
I don't remember that one. I guess I didn't get to that one.
He's...
the voice that they give him in the audiobook is
jittery
great.
and always wearing glasses and just sort of,
Yeah, I could see that. I know there's I could feel like there's some other pop culture character that I want to compare him to, but I can't remember who it is right now.
But yeah, in the audiobook, the voice is... He's just got this really long, suffering voice. Why are you doing this, mistress?
I could have been a gardener.
Everyone came to see my gardens.
My garden of chairs.
Of crystals.
That's the other thing that's interesting is there's essentially two forms. Because he's vines, but then they dissolve into crystals and shatter and dissolve away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really interesting because he's sort of actually like a precursor to film, where he's a bunch of still images that rapidly change to give the illusion of movement, but it moves slow enough where you can see the frame rate. He's probably operating at 15 FPS, I think.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about because we know that she's an edge dancer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've already talked about the fact that edge dancers can heal people. What is their other ability, Jordan?
They become slippery. They become
turn the world
frictionless
into their slip and slide.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's actually a great counterpoint to the adhesion powers that Kaladin has, where you can stick people to things. They can do the reverse. They can make themselves slick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hilarious because suddenly she's moving around like she's a skee ball.
Now remind me, can't she also do the opposite?
She can,
because when she climbs,
she was grabbing Wendell.
She was grabbing Wendell. Okay, for
Yeah,
some reason in
Wendell.
my head she was Spider-Manning up, but
no, she was grabbing Wendell.
It probably looks like it to everybody else because they can't see Wendell.
Right. Well, I was just thinking that because I believe it's over friction specifically, isn't it?
She's hilarious.
Yeah, she has no friction, or she.
And we're probably going to discuss a lot of this when we do Edge Dancer, but It is a unique power that doesn't get utilized enough. Friction manipulation. Again, I have a physics degree, so I love this crap, and I just love how they try to grab her, and she just like just squirts out like butter, and they're just like, I don't why.
How?
Because sticking to things, everyone gets stuck in mud. Slipping on ice is the closest thing most people get, but in this world, most people don't get ice.
Yeah.
It's a fairly temperate climate, and so no one has any experience that's even somewhat close to what she is.
Yeah,
and
like,
then on
Horn
top
Eaters
of it,
would have
she's...
experienced ice, but they're not really in the Azish kingdom? Is that where they are? Okay.
And so, I don't know. It's fun.
Once again, I was right. Looking at the Coppermind, they can make their feet nearly frictionless. They can escape any grasp or grip the slickest walls.
I guess you could increase the friction if you can
exactly
release the friction.
And that's what they do. She does climb with Wendell, but I don't think that's all she climbs with. I believe that she does use...
She uses something else, too.
I'd have to reread it.
Yep.
Yeah, I was skimming that part because I've read that scene more times than other ones. So...
That is validating. Anyway.
Yeah.
And of course, we were talking about Nail. He shows up again.
Yeah, he's scary.
Yeah, I guess we did skip over the part where she accidentally makes her best friend the ruler.
Yeah, by getting him killed and then healing him. Yeah,
Brandon has a thing about girls accidentally making the men in their lives emperor. Because, I mean, Vin did it,
Yeah,
too.
Vin did it.
Oh, yeah, I was like, who else did this happen to?
I did something bad. What? I made you emperor. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Gox.
Poor kid.
What is his name? Akasix?
Prime
This is his actual name.
Akasix.
Prime Akasix. So
Yeah.
I love the idea. First off, the Azish. Like, they're the most bureaucratic of bureaucrats in the world.
You're emperor by having the best essay.
And I love how no one wants to be Prime Akasix because Seth has been slowly... it's just
he kills them. He's killed like 6 in like 2 months.
It's just it's like that one weed you're trying to get rid of. He's just trying to do that, but it's Prime Akasix.
Just keeps popping up again and again and again.
Well, and what happens is he gets killed, or essentially killed, and then Lift uses her other surge, progression, to heal him. And the Azish see this, and they say, "Oh, he performed a miracle." And Lift is like, "Yep, he did. He sure did.
He sure did. It wasn't me. Don't look at me." She's like, "I just want to eat your dinner." I think that's her last line. And she's like, "Can I eat your dinner?" Because that was her whole goal, was to eat the Emperor's dinner.
Well, because to her, she doesn't have a favorite food. Her favorite food is yours.
Somebody else's, yep.
Because it tastes better if it belongs to someone else. Which is just so wonderful. Mm-hmm. And this ends up having a huge impact on stuff that goes on in Oathbringer. So
yeah.
Yep. Lift affects a lot around her.
Yeah, and I did like that Nail got mad at his assistant when he killed Gox. He's like, "You didn't fill out the paperwork."
Yep.
It's like, you broke the law. You were supposed to do that.
Because again, he's straight.
Oh, yeah.
True
lawful. True
Mm-hmm.
lawful.
Doesn't matter if he likes the law, but...
And he'll still manipulate it to get what he wants, but...
But you have to follow the letter of the law.
And he's just like, "Nope, she's pardoned. She's cool."
He's like, "All right."
which credit to Gox there. That's pretty quick thinking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Most people wouldn't become emperor all of a sudden after dying, and their first thought is, "How do I help out my buddy?"
Most of the time, it's like, "Why am I not dead?"
Yeah,
or,
it's just mostly just freaking out.
Was there a sword in me just a minute ago?
Yeah, across the neck. That's what it was. A knife across the neck.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We also need to talk about Seth not doing so well.
Oh.
Yeah. So, he's doing fine at first. I mean, he's hating himself, of course, but he hasn't. it's partway through his story that he kind of has an existential crisis.
Well, it's because, first of all, he's in Urithiru.
Yeah, he's hanging out, just freaking
Just hanging out in Urithiru. It's like, I don't know how, I somehow missed that the first time I read that.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Even though it says Urithiru
Right there. Yeah.
in the middle of the text. I don't know how
Right.
I missed it.
We all did,
But-
apparently.
Well, they hadn't really talked much about Urithiru, or a whole lot about it at that point.
Yeah,
Like-
it was just the fact he blatantly says he's there, and somehow I missed it.
Yeah.
But more to the point, he sees dead people in every shadow. He hears their screams.
Well, because Taravangian has been sending him on a killing spree.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
like
this is the
he
first
is
time we
death.
see him. Oh yeah, and this is the first time we've seen him.
And everybody,
since
like, we've
his
been
fight
seeing-
with Kaladin and Dalinar and Adolin, and he sees that Kaladin has Stormlight, which the whole reason he's truthless is because he raised a false alarm, and suddenly,
It wasn't so false.
well,
And he's worried about that.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've heard about Zeth through the course of the book. Because you just keep hearing about how the assassin in white is showing up and killing all these rulers. Mm-hmm. And we know that Taravangian's the one who's been sending him to fight them or to kill them. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly he goes, he finally is sent against the Blackthorn. And Dalinar first, again, shows how much of a bad A he is with the last clap, catching the sword. But then he fights with Kaladin.
And that freaks him out.
Well, because Kaladin starts using Stormlight, and it breaks Zeth.
Well, it's because he sees him heals the Shardblade wound.
Yeah.
And we find out that the reason he was called Truthless, it somehow related to the Radiance coming back.
Yeah, because his ruling, the Shin ruling body, said that no, they haven't come back, and Zeth was insistent they were, and so they're like, no, you're wrong. Now you have to go be truthless.
I think his specific thing, he actually said the Voidbringers were coming, and thus, if he sees a Knight Radiant, it means the Voidbringers
are coming. Yeah,
Right.
and thus he was not truthless.
And so it absolutely shatters him, because suddenly everything that's gone on for the past several years
is on him.
Mm-hmm. It's not just I was obeying orders, because he didn't have to obey those orders.
Yep.
And I mean
That's what Kaladin berates him for.
That kind of weight is just it's enough to break a man. Because he's basically been in denial all this time, and then suddenly that he has this protective wall of, because I'm truthless, I have to obey my master. If I'm not truthless, I didn't have to obey him, and I murdered all these people for no reason.
Well, and I like that Kaladin says that to him, where he's just like, it doesn't matter. You could have quit anytime you wanted.
Well, and that's the thing.
It's an excuse.
He saw the chink in Zeth's armor, and he's just like, all right, strike fast, strike hard.
And just
Well,
break
he
him
is
wide open.
He is a spearman.
I mean, to the point where when he's fighting Zeth, where Kaladin and Zeth are fighting in the High Storm, he's crazed. He is absolutely just frothing at the mouth, insane, because he's just like, no, you're lying. This isn't true. Like, he's just in pure denial. And finally he does accept it. And he's just like, well, because he has never been, he's sought death for so long, and he's never been able to seek it.
Well, that's
Like,
he's
he's wanted it, but he hasn't ever been able to seek it.
in his interlude. He said all the voices in the darkness, and he's like, he hated them, and it's like none of them had been strong enough to kill them.
Right.
Like, he's gone from the point where he's sorry for these murders to where he now hates all the people he's murdered because they weren't strong enough to stop him.
Well, in the first one, he even talks about how, in the first book, in his interludes, it talks about how, no, this one wouldn't be able to kill him either. And he couldn't tell them or ask them to kill him or anything like that, because that would be actively seeking death. He's desired death for years. And in the end, finally, he's just like, I'm no longer bound by this. Just, I welcome it.
Yeah.
And then he meets Nail himself, because Nail keeps popping up in this book. Although he refers to him as Nin. Nin, sun god.
Sun God.
Yeah.
Which is, if you think about it, a pretty cool name.
Yeah.
It really is.
But we need to talk about Taravangian before we go, because
Oh
first
my
of all...
goodness.
Well, no.
What do you mean?
We've got to talk about the big moment that I've been waiting for in Zeth's interludes at the very, very end. That one line spoken to him that made me scream and throw the book across the room when they say, we're giving you a new shard blade because you no longer have the honor blade.
Was that an interlude?
It was his last one at the very... I mean, it was a Zeth scene, which we haven't talked about Zeth scenes.
Oh, okay.
And so the last thing he says, you just hear, hello, would you like to destroy some evil today? And that phrase, it was just sort of a, wait a minute. Wait, we're crossing these lines?
Yeah, that
Because-
was definitely the... I'd like to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative moment.
Exactly. Because that's the very first time we've clearly seen a crossover. There have been world hoppers who've popped up in interludes and stuff like that, but it's not blatant. This one, it's just like, hi,
Right
I have a
there.
catchphrase and I'm going to say it right now.
I'm
And
one of
the
the four main
adorable.
characters of a different book series. And I'm now
a whole
here.
different world.
And I'm a terrifying weapon, and I'm being put into your hands.
And I'm
go
just
wrong?
adorable.
And that's the other thing is it ends there. Like he says, would you like to destroy some evil today? And then the scene closes. It's just like, what? What?
Did you actually throw your book?
Yes, I did. I was in my room on my bed, and I actually held the book and I just went, ah!
You see, because
That's a hefty book.
I did the audiobook for this, and when I heard that, my reaction was, yes.
I think I probably squeaked. Because that's what I do when I get excited.
Like, no, there are 2 times that I have thrown a Brandon book. That moment and the earring.
I was going to guess.
Because it was just... And that reveal was perfect. Would you like to destroy some evil today? It's not... There was this sword and it looked like this, and it was just... Boop. Very calm.
He did comment on the strange scabbard.
Yes.
Because a
and
scabbard
then it
is a
was
very
so thin.
strange thing for a big sword. Because if it looks like a shard blade and it has a scabbard, everyone's just like, what? That doesn't make sense.
Yep. And
What
so
is a
he's just...
scabbard?
But again, it's calm Nightblood. It's, hello, would you like to destroy some evil today? Like you're, talking to a friggin' butler.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
It's just like, yeah, hey, could you also pick up some milk on the way home? Thanks.
how can I service your evil destroying needs today?
Thank you for using this today.
Yep.
Thank
okay.
you for using Nightblood.
Nightblood
Okay.
Incorporated.
Yeah, okay. We're going to touch quickly on Lahan, just because basically what happens is we see sort of some lead into... This becomes more important in Oathbringer. We see kind of the lead into what's been going on in Kolinar all this time.
Yeah.
My
the
one
debauchery.
wonder, yeah, because with all the excess and debauchery, my one question is, I forget his name, but has the Heart of the Revel,
A shirt marn.
yeah, has he shown up yet, or is that her naturally?
And I think it's just sort of he's kind of coming in.
Yeah, so similar. So your theory is like he's similar to the Thrill, where he has sort of a range.
Well, and I also think that, like you say, is she that naturally? I think she's somewhat that naturally.
But it is
And
it's
then,
accentuated.
and then it comes and it's just like, all right, here we go. And because I believe she actually, Oathbringer. We're not talking about Oathbringer.
Yeah,
But she gets called out by Lon.
But yeah, and so what happens is
or by Pai.
by Pai.
Is it Lahan's the other guy. Okay.
Lahan is the perspective.
Lahan is the fat priest who's
living it up and enjoying his easy job.
Right.
You got the easiest job in all of Alethkar.
And so she starts speaking up, and he's just like, "Don't make waves." And she keeps making waves, and it's and then
she make a wave?
And it's like the first she gets there in the day, and it's the next morning that she
didn't make a wave. She jumped in as a cannonball.
Yeah,
well, and it's like she was executed. Mm-hmm. The riot started the next morning.
Yeah,
and it's just like
end scene.
Oh. And it's just, and then of course it leads into everything that goes on in Oathbringer. We'll talk about that later, promise. Okay, Jordan, start us off on Taravangian.
Okay, I loved this. First of all, the chapter in the audiobook was 56 minutes long. That's how long the Taravangian interlude is, and it goes all over the place.
Interlude.
But it is, you find out because we knew Taravangian was doing awful stuff, but we had no clue why. And then we finally find out who the diagram are,
because at this point we've been reading, there have been epigrams that we haven't even talked about the epigrams, and we're
well, it's going to have to be a different episode.
We may have episode 5.
But
or just another episode. Anyway,
the diagram, the concept of a religion based around one man's singularly
brilliant
day where he made all these predictions, and as the chapter goes on, we find out why is his intelligence vacillating? Mm-hmm. Why is his ability to feel empathy vacillating in excess? And as the chapter goes on, we find out, yes, he made a deal with the Night Watcher. We find out he made that deal because he met Gavilar on the night of his own murder. Gavilar apparently had been having the same visions that Dalinar went through. And we find out that he revealed it to his good buddy Taravangian.
Yep.
And Taravangian's like, crap, the world's ending. So he goes to the Night Watcher and says, can you give me the capacity to save this world? And she gives him the intellect and the empathy to save the world, but never both at the same time. They're inversely proportioned. Mm-hmm. And so,
okay, can I tell you who I picture when I think of Taravangian every time? It's just what automatically comes to mind.
No.
Okay, never mind.
See, I just wanted to see what the option gave us. But seriously,
no. Avatar: The Last Airbender, King Boomy.
Because I pictured less hair, but
well, because and the thing is, when he is empathetic and stupid, I imagine fake King Boomy when he's hunched over, and when he's brilliant and in his manic stage, I imagine
Buff Boomy,
exactly.
The 90-year-old with a 6-pack
with the crazed eyes, but that's just that's who has always come to mind when I've thought of Two-Phase Taravangian.
I could see that, yeah.
And so,
but I think of someone who's just all frail all the time. But the thing I love about the diagram is it was a day. It was so brilliant that in order to encapsulate his brilliance, he had to create a different language, which he thankfully wrote a cipher for so that people could read it, because he's that brilliant. And he just goes through. And what I love is they know it's not omniscient. It's just the best guesses of the most brilliant person who's ever existed, and the further they stray, the less accurate it's been. But they still trust it because it's they view it as their best shot to save the world. And then on top of it all, we find out, he's been the one manipulating the Vaden High Princes into the bloodiest civil war ever, so that all the High Princes kill each other, to where he's the only one left.
Because he has some small tie-in.
Yeah, goes to the Vaden King, who's like...
on his deathbed.
Yeah. And he's just like, you've manipulated it all, and, and he's like, I'd like to see those High Princes, suck on that when I make you the heir. And he's like, oh, there are no high princes. What? And he's like, all of them? Yeah, they're all dead. My goodness, you have really pulled this thing off.
Man, you've been busy.
And it's... Man, it's grisly.
Oh, yes. No,
And I love that
Taravangian, anytime he shows up now, because like anytime he popped up in Oathbringer, I'm just like, okay, let's see what's happening. What's Taravangian up to?
What's great is you have this chapter, and then near the end of the book, Dalinar's like, oh, my good friend Taravangian has somehow become king of Vadenar. Oh, like, at least we can trust Taravangian. And you're on the other side of the glass, and it's like, no! The murderer's inside the house!
The other thing that Brandon does that I feel is brilliant is for each part, like part 1, part 2, part 3 of the book, it tells you what viewpoints you're getting. And so as you get to like part 4 and you just see Taravangian's name, you're just like, where? I want to skip ahead.
He is at this point the most interesting man in the world.
He really is.
Well, because on top of it, cool. he vacillates between empathy and okay, we lost Bill's camera. Empathy,
it went down.
Yeah,
I'm here. I'm just looking for something.
Okay, between empathy and brilliance, when he is in his more empathetic moods, he becomes so. Like he weeps for all the horrors that he has wrought without the context behind why he did that. And it's one of these things he keeps saying, I needed more of these brilliant days so we can do more with the diagram, so that we can reinterpret it with better data. But part of it, I think, and he doesn't say as much, I think part of it he wants to be brilliant because on those days he doesn't feel as horrible. He
has a death basement in his castle. So yeah, I'd feel pretty horrible with that.
No one wants to go into the death basement.
No.
That's going to kill the resale value of that castle, for the record.
Yeah. How many exorcisms do you have to do?
Infinite. You need infinite exorcisms.
All the exorcisms.
Yeah.
You have to get all of Threnody, all their silver, and we can maybe make this happen.
Yep. All right. Okay, so now we've got to move on. One last
quick scene with Wit, right?
Yep, we'll talk about the epilogue, which is Wit chatting with a Kremling, which has been implied, especially including by words of Brandon, that it's not just any Kremling. It's actually a Hordling, which we'll learn a little bit more about in Oathbringer. It's part of a different kind of.
Well, actually, we learned more about it in Edge Dancer. Actually,
that's right. It's Edge Dancer. We learn more about it, and then we'll talk about that one next week. So, or not next week, 2 weeks from now.
Yeah,
next episode.
And that's not the huge takeaway.
No, the huge takeaway is first up is again we get a look at Wit, who's playing the jester role, the omniscient jester role from Shakespeare, essentially. And he's basically talking to the Kremling about what's going on, gives us sort of a look at overarching stories, threads that are happening, and then there's a pop. And who should appear but
Yasna
Colin. She's not dead, everybody.
She's not dead.
We were so shocked.
And then I was shocked. I didn't realize she wasn't dead the first time I read it. So that was a big thing for me.
There wasn't a body.
Yeah, the moment I didn't see a body.
I read that too fast and didn't click that.
See, and because I'm obsessed with Yasna, because she's my favorite character in these books, when he quote unquote kills her off, I have to do the same thing I do with Kelsey, or reread it to be sure. And reread it. I'm like, no body. You can't keep Yasna down.
But the thing that's great is she pops up and she's like kind of ragged, and is she holding her shard blade at that point?
She holds it as soon as she sees Wit.
That's right.
Then she gets a shard blade.
But I love how she pops up and she's like, I've got to warn them about this. Oh, warn about this. The Voidbringer's coming. Oh, we need to go to Irithyr. Already done.
Already done. We need to do this. Already done.
And
The
Witch
Knights
just
of
sort of
Radiance
cheerful
already
about it.
refounded with the help of your ward. You're lying.
No.
The truth is far too much fun. Mm-hmm. Do you know that one?
Yes, but no.
That one's Hook. Anyway.
Yes, that is.
So yeah, so Wit just has his wonderful smarmy smug, and we finally get to see Yasta taken aback a little bit, which is kind of great.
Well, it's because she's
always so put together, and she's not right there.
Well, and she's been so ahead of everyone else in the game, but she got stuck at the worst moment in Shadesmar, and she pops out like ready for a crisis, and the crisis has already come. Which is just one of those things. She's prepped her sail. Like it's like when you sit there, you brace yourself for something and it doesn't come, and so you sort of stumble forward. She has braced herself fully, and it's like, nope.
Well, and I love that Wit is there to meet her. Mm-hmm. Like
he knew she was going to be there.
He doesn't just happen to be in the same place that Yasta pops back into the physical realm.
He specifically, like, from his perspective, when it's about to happen, he like puts on his most self-satisfied like he even calls it like it's like he has a specific face he has in mind. He wants to maximize this moment.
Because after everything, Hoyd is a showman.
Yep.
It's
Oh, it's just hilarious. And I just love how she doesn't know Wit is someone special, but when she shows up, she's not exactly unsurprised that it's Wit who showed up.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of like when Adolin finds out, like for certain, Kaladin is a Radiant. He's like, I knew it. I knew there was something.
Knew there was something to you.
And so I think it's the same with Yes No. She's like, I knew there was something about this guy.
I knew it. I knew you were bluffing. I knew he was bluffing. Sorry, so many references today.
It's all the references.
Anyway,
Epigrams.
All right. No, we're going to have to do that in a different episode because we're kind of at the end of our time already. So, but that means that we have more to talk about in the future, and we'll be able to spend more time on each of them. So I'm actually really excited about that. But
yeah, because we have to come up with a lot of things once we run out of books.
Yeah,
unless
I was like,
Brandon suddenly starts, unless we get the Sanderson bot. If we get the Sanderson bot, our fortunes could change really quickly.
So beyond that point, okay, now it's time to thank our patrons. Because of our patrons, we're able to hold our monthly giveaways. Speaking of, this time we are giving away something kind of cool. So this is the symbol of the Cobalt Guard, a.k.a. Dalinar's personal bodyguard. But wait. There's two of them.
I knew you were going to do it. I knew it.
There's two
There
of
is
them.
two of them. So we are actually giving away a set of these patches. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to, for you to enter, we're going to have you tag somebody in each of our social media posts. We're going to have one up on Instagram, one on Twitter, and one on Facebook. And what we want you to do is we want you to tag somebody who you would want, having your back in a tough situation. If somebody, who would you fight back to back with to defend what's important to you?
Why would we specify that, Bill? What's the theory?
The Cobalt Guard works with Bridge 4?
Cobalt Guard, back-to-back guards.
The Cobalt Guard, they guard Dalinar, and so it's just, who would you... it's sort of a brotherhood, sisterhood,
well, they were all men, I thought, weren't they?
I don't know. It's never specified.
I think Bridge 4 is when they start letting women...
It's never fully specified. You're probably right.
I mean, they're a mundane group, so it makes sense that it's especially with
men.
The way the Alethi are with their gender roles.
I did like Wit's comment on that. He's like, did you ever notice that the women's roles are the ones that are nice? You can sit back and relax and have fun, and the men are where you go get, stabbed with the spear.
Yeah. So we're going to put up, in the next day or two, we're going to put up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter a post, and we'll have you comment and tag somebody so that you can you get one of the patches and you give the other one to somebody else.
Yeah,
So
for those in the audio only, those like you see them, they're pretty good quality.
Yeah,
they look
these
They're
really
from
cool.
the brand, the Dragonsteel store, right?
Yeah, we want to
Yeah.
give special thanks to Brandon Sanderson's online store at store.brandonsanderson.com for sending us so many awesome goodies to share with our listeners, because these are cool.
Yeah, but do you know what's interesting?
What?
The fact that those aren't the coolest things
Wait.
in that bag.
No. These have to be the coolest things in the bag.
No. It actually turns out that there's actually an item I specifically think about that's cooler, but there's other cooler items as well.
Well,
But one in
I mean,
specific.
Well, goodness gracious, we'll have to just wait and see what that is.
We will, indeed.
Now, as always, we want to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to keep creating new episodes. The show will continue to be free for everybody, but if you want to support us, even with $1 or $2 per episode, go to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. When you become a patron, you will get automatic access to our Discord channel, where we've got a budding community. We've got some great discussions in there. We've got some weird discussions in there. We've got some speculations. We've been talking a lot about Doctor Who lately for some reason.
Yeah.
And
It came up.
but it's a fun group, and we would love to have you join us over there. You can also continue discussing the books about the Cosmere. You can talk about the show. You can interact with us directly. And you'll also get bonus content like the 6-7, which is a collection of 7 pieces of content from the internet that we just find and want to share and say, hey, this is cool. Let's have our patrons enjoy it too. Beyond that, our patrons will automatically be entered into our giveaways. They'll get 1 free entry. They'll have to do the other 2 on their own. And, of course, the giveaways aren't exclusive to patrons. They're just get an automatic entry. And, of course, being a patron helps us continue to make the show and improve the show. And hopefully, as time goes on and as we get more patrons, even do it more often than every other week. This week, we do want to specifically thank Ari and B. And we actually want to give a special shout out to him. He has his own podcast, and it's really great. It's called The World Hopper's Guide to the Cosmere. And he does
Because apparently we all just make podcasts with names that are just way too long.
Yes.
But the thing that I really like about what he's doing is he just cuts it into bite-sized chunks. And every single one of those bites, though, is rich with flavor. And
I can't imagine how much research he does for each episode.
It's true. I think his longest episode so far has been about 24 minutes, but most of them have been an average of 10 to 15.
Yeah, but that 24-minute episode is amazing to think it's only 24 minutes when you factor in the fact that it covers Hoyd. That's the...
Of course.
Hoyd.
But yeah, so anyway, special shout out to him and to all of our current and past patrons. Thank you for your support. We really appreciate it. We are continuing to save up lore questions and aluminum foil hat theories from our listeners. We've got an episode coming up in a couple months where we're going to be talking about aluminum foil hat theories, answering questions from a mailbag. So please, we need more questions. So please write us. Let us know things that you would like us to discuss, questions that you're not entirely sure about clear on in the Cosmere, and just help us answer the questions that you want to know. Do you have a prediction of what's going to happen? Do you have an expectation? Do you just have a character you really, really, really like and want to talk about? Let us know. You can write us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and we would love to talk about that on the air.
I just want to interject something
Go for it.
real quick. So there's something interesting that's going to be happening here soonish in the next couple of months that we haven't had a chance to do yet on this podcast. Brandon is releasing a new Cosmere book.
Yes.
It's book 3 of White Sands.
Yes.
So we're going to do Edge Dancer next. It's going to be 1 episode, and then we're going to do in rapid order book 1 of White Sand, then book 2, and then hopefully we'll be able to read book 3 and do the book 3 right then and there. So I know for some of you haven't touched White Sands yet, and it might be a time to start taken a look at it if you want to be able to jump on it. Also, because if you want to order the book, it's you might want to get on that because it's coming out pretty soon.
It's coming out
It'll be coming out in July.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in about a month, it's dropping. Month and a half.
And they're pretty fast reads. They're graphic novels, so they're pretty fast.
July, not June. So yeah, but month and a half is probably about right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so jump on that because that way you can join in the discussion and hopefully not get spoiled because we're going to be talking about that one pretty soon after it comes out. Mm-hmm. So now, outside of the show, we do have our own personal projects. Amy, why don't you go ahead and lead us off on that?
So, I'm on Facebook at Coincidence Cosplay and Props, on Twitter at Coincidence Cosp, because my name is too long, and on Instagram at Coincidence_cosplay. Right now I'm doing 3D printed crowns, is largely what I'm doing. So the picture, if you saw me on the social media stuff, that's for Queen Eleanor from Brave. So I'm making one for me and one for a friend, because we're both going to do Queen Eleanor. I'm doing the crowns and the wigs, and she's doing the dresses. So I've been doing crown work. Should hopefully finish it this week. And then I have to finish tackling the wigs, which are scary, because there's so much hair. And then I think I'm going to try and finish up her Evil Queen crown and then do my Nazgul. And I'm trying to make sure I finish my Nazgul, because it's been this thing that's sitting there, and I just need to finish it. So that's
Nice.
what I'm doing.
Cool. Jordan?
You can always find me at twitch.tv/splicestream. It's where I stream mostly Amiibo content, but I plan to start doing a bit of Mario Maker 2 content once that drops in late June. But if you want to help me out, best thing you can do, just go to twitch.tv/splicestream, give me a follow, and just come visit sometime. We have a lot of fun in chat, so you might have fun too. That's the scintillating review I'm going to give my own stream.
And when I'm not here, I've got a bunch of board game reviews over at the Innkeeper's Table at www.innkeeperstable.com. I've kind of been on an unintentional hiatus. I'm trying to get that started back up again. Hopefully that'll be soon. Anyway, check out my reviews over there, and you can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Innkeeper's Table. I'm trying to keep those up at least while I'm trying to get more reviews written. For those of you who can't become patrons just yet, of course, please consider heading over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review over there. It helps us out. It really helps to improve the likelihood that other people are going to find us when they're searching for Cosmere podcasts. So please, if you could do that, we would love it. Just go drop us a 5-star review. Now, in addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, our listeners can find our videos on YouTube or the audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, pretty much anywhere else where you find podcasts by doing a search for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us and contact us through Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile at Cosmere Studies. For our next episode, we're sticking around on Roshar for just a little bit longer with our discussion of Edge Dancer, a novella that takes place between books 2 and 3 of the Stormlight Archive and focuses on everyone's favorite little urchin, Lift. We'd love for you to join us, so don't miss the live stream on May 27th, 2019. In the meantime, though, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember, there's always
another
secret.
secret.